just to start off, because I know many of you might not be familiar with Snowflake, our platform, basically we service everything end-to-end from connecting and accessing all your data, to moving that data around, to transforming that data, to then using that data for analytics or exposing that in any application you want. So it is a complete end-to-end data and AI experience. The reason that most people look to Snowflake is because building applications and managing data isn't always as easy as it sounds. I remember when I first learned about data engineering a very long time ago now, and I thought, that sounds pretty simple. What do you mean there's a whole career out of this? Turns out there is definitely a reason why there's a whole career around moving data around and getting it ready for analytics. Snowflake's value propositions, the first one is easy. So we're a fully managed end-to-end service, which means that, for example, we're releasing a new data storage warehouse. We've put all the improvements on it so our customers automatically get twice the speed of query results without having to touch anything. So we say that we like to take on 70% of the engineering work so our customers can focus on the other 30%. The other thing is that we're really efficient. So everything that we build for is meant for scale. It's meant for production-ready applications, speed, as well as cost efficiencies, because we know that this also can get very expensive very quickly. And then finally, trusted. Especially as we'll talk about this with AI, but as there's more and more understanding and emphasis on knowing that you have one piece of data, who has access to that piece of data, who can use that data, where does that data get exposed? So Snowflake is end-to-end security, privacy, and governance. So you have full visibility into everything across the platform. I'll talk a little bit more about our AI use cases. That's my area of expertise, just to give you an idea of what we do. So the 3 use cases we focus on is first, scalable AI processing. So essentially, how do you take all of that data that you have and use AI to turn that into something of value? So building a scalable AI-powered pipeline that can ingest, transform, and then eventually expose that data for analytics. The second use case we focus on is state-of-the-art retrieval. So first, there's getting the data, and then the second piece is using AI applications to pull the right data forward however you need it. So some of you might be familiar with the concept of RAG or text-to-SQL, but basically this is using AI to find access data using natural language. The third use case that we do, which most people probably have heard the word agent too many times at this point, but we support business agentic applications. And the way that Snowflake does this is because agents are completely and entirely dependent on the data that they have access to. So making sure that all of the data that gets fed into an agent, or we have our own agent that determines the retrieval service, and that the data that your agent is using is business ready, secure, and trusted. All right, so let's talk through what a workflow looks like on Snowflake. So first, govern multimodal data. We started out with just structured data over 10 years ago, as most data warehouses did. But especially in the last few years, there's been more and more demand for having not just structured data, but also semi-structured and unstructured data. Now we're even talking about multimodal analysis. So once where data teams had to think mostly about numbers, now you're having to think about how to process, analyze, store, and use images, text, video, audio files, etc. The exciting thing here is that it's opened up a lot of new opportunities, and that's one of the use cases we'll walk through today in the demo. The second piece is scalable pipelines. So building a pipeline that is able to handle inputs at scale efficiently and that can also incorporate the visibility that you need. Like I said, this can often be more complex than you originally think it might be, but especially now that AI is now part of pipelines, having that visibility and end-to-end ability to create a pipeline in an efficient way is more and more important for data engineering teams. The third piece is using efficient AI inference. So we'll talk a little bit about this, but it's essentially how do you access AI models to transform and pull additional analytics out of your unstructured or semi-structured data. So if you have a picture of a receipt, how do you extract how much you paid, where was the restaurant, who paid, what was ordered, and can use that in business analytics. So this is where we're using AI, access to AI models through functions, which we'll talk about a little bit in Snowflake, but we do this through both SQL and Python. And then finally, it's insight and delivery. So it's really important to keep the context of you've ingested your data, you've transformed that data, but then how do you activate that data? And I'll talk through a little bit that as well. I want to focus today on our LLM functions. So as core to our fundamental belief in Snowflake, we wanted to make this as simple as possible. So we've created out-of-the-box large language model functions that automatically complete a prompt for you depending on what you want to do. The reason we did this is that because oftentimes, in order to use AI or access LLMs or understand, it would take someone the knowledge of how to set it up, how to manage the APIs, how to access the data science team who's probably busy with something else. And it's a lot of blockers and barriers to entry to do something that might sound simple. So one use case that we just recently worked on was taking a ton of emails, looking through the subject lines and putting them into categories. Ideally, you have your data science team not on this kind of problem, but it is an important problem. So we were thinking, how do we enable business analysts and data engineers to essentially be able to do the same thing without needing to go through the whole AI infrastructure? So this is where we've created functions. As you can see, essentially you can use a select statement, and I'll demonstrate this in the Python notebook as well. You pick your model, you have your prompt, and then it gives you feedback and can point to a table. So these are just an example of some of the functions that we do that we found our customers most often use. Complete, summarize, sentiment, translate, embedding text, and categorize. I can never say that word. And so as you can see in the select statement, it's essentially just choosing any one of these functions, pointing it at data, and looking at the results. The point I want to emphasize a little bit here is you can choose, you have total flexibility over what models you use. Snowflake has a model garden, so you can plug and play, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the demo. It's incredibly efficient for batch operations. So especially with LLM calls, they can get very expensive very quickly. So Snowflake is optimized for batch processing. So how do you take extremely large sets of data and effectively process them all at once? We have REST API built so that you can integrate in and out. Snowflake is incredibly interoperable, so we are able to pull in tools along your pipeline or connect easily to your other products. No integrations or GPU to manage. We carry that all, like I said, the 70% of the management burden. And then it's real-time, fine-tune models, and then you can control your data. So essentially, these are all of the things that you might be thinking about when going from just experimenting with AI but into production. And what Snowflake does is make sure that all of this is ready for you so that when you want to go into production, everything is taken care of. You can scale, you have security and compliance, there's total access and governance, and you don't have to manage, for instance, if one of the LLMs changes their APIs, and you have to go back and fix that because your product is broken. The other piece that I want to talk about is what we've been doing a lot about, is that increasing the focus on making our AI interoperable. What this means is that ensuring that when we really say access any data anywhere in any format, what does that mean? So Iceberg is something that we've just released, and this is essentially a combination of Snowflake and Iceberg tables where you can keep your data somewhere else, and then you have the full performance access and can use that data within Snowflake without having to move that data. A big challenge with managing and building AI applications is data movement and data quality. So our thesis is, how do we enable our developers, our analysts, our data engineers to support running multiple workloads off of one copy of data? So how do you have a single source of truth to manage, which simplifies understanding what data is sitting where, who's using it, what's the quality, what's the freshness, but take that all and just share that data internally within your organization or externally with other people. The final piece I want to talk about is I'll talk about activate your data. I won't demo this today, but I do want to call it out. So in Snowflake, we have internal out-of-the-box two functions. One is for structured data and one is for unstructured data. We also do have a vector database where you can do your own embedding and RAG if you want. And this is an example of how you can completely customize or you can have access to things out of the box. On the right is a front end that we call Snowflake Intelligence. And essentially on the left, you have out-of-the-box text-to-SQL that's state-of-the-art, and then RAG, in order to be able to retrieve any of that data and then use that either in a dashboard or in a chat application. When we talk to a lot of analytics teams, there's more and more demand for self-service analytics. What does that mean? It means that your business users can just go in and find the data they want without having to burden the data science or the analytics team with a lot of requests. So with Snowflake, just like we're making all of that back to middle end infrastructure more accessible and easy for people building the products, this allows you to make your data, whatever insights you've created, more accessible to your business users. All right. So I'm going to walk through an example with you. I have pre-run it because I am on the Wi-Fi. But I'll talk you a little bit through what this looks like actually in Snowflake so you get a feel for our platform. So on the left, it's pretty simple, as you can see. So here I've just created a new notebook, but we have worksheets. You can see your data, data projects, marketplace, AI, ML, monitoring, and a little bit of admin. So pretty straightforward. With Snowflakes, we're going to focus on notebooks today just because Python tends to be one of the more well-used languages, but you'll see SQL statements in here, and it's just as easy to create a SQL statement in Snowflake. It's really easy to add data. So for this example, let's say that you're a food truck company, and well, you have your usual data around how much people are spending, how many meals you're selling, where people are buying. You also have all of these customer reviews. So this is a pretty standard problem for a lot of people. We have all of this text data, but we don't know really how to make use of that data and how to then tell back to the business, okay, here's some interesting insights that can help you. So we're going to just say, let's take all of the customer reviews, and for here, we've put them just in an S3 bucket. And then we'll look at sentiment, we'll look at how customers are feeling, we'll translate the reviews, and then finally we'll do action where we write an email. So this notebook, it is in a quick start in Snowflake's website, so if you do want to follow along or do it afterwards, just search, and you can do everything with a free trial account pretty easily. So first, let's just look at the number of reviews we have. So just a simple select statement, select count from truck reviews, which is the table in Snowflake. So we have 118,000 reviews. Next, import Python packages. Here we can do an import statement, or with Snowflake, it's really easy. We're connected to, and here's where the Wi-Fi, yep. So here you can search and find any number of Python packages, just click import and it's done for you. So you can either write the code or just import through our UI. Okay, so next, let's say we just want to understand what kind of reviews are we looking at? What does the data look like? So you can easily just create a data frame in Snowflake and then view what the data looks like. So we have review ID, we have order ID, truck, language. Some of the reviews, some of them were already seen, might not be looking so good. City, date, and truck brand name. So we've put all of the reviews into something that we can start to work with and start to understand maybe where we want to do some digging. So in data frame and functions, just do a quick exploration. And this is one, and sorry, I'm also speaking in English because my Spanish is not very good. But it's quite common that people might have things in different languages. Normally it can be a pain to move that data out, translate that data, and pull it back in. But with our Cortex translate function, it's really easy just to translate those reviews with a single select statement. So no data movement, and you get automatically translated reviews. So here we see we have a lot of reviews in different languages. So we want to say, okay, here now let's go through and look at some translate reviews. The other thing that we can potentially do, so we can extract answers. So let's say we also have images of receipts to go along with the reviews. We can get a synopsis with summarize. We can look at sentiment. So there's obviously a number of things that you can do automatically out of the box with the Cortex functions given the review. So you can translate them and then look at sentiment, which we'll do in this example. But you can really play around and do a number of different things. All of this is built, so there's, again, no managing APIs, no setting anything up, no setting up new language models. It's just all there. So with Translate, again, you can see how simple the code is. And let's say, okay, we're going to translate them all into English, so then we can run Cortex Complete and try and get sentiment. So here's where, okay, again, we just have to use what's a prompt. The feature I do want to point out that's handy in Snowflake. So this is an initial prompt, and then it puts the new categories into a column. So essentially, we want to look through all of the reviews. Are they good? Are they poor? We want to group them into buckets. But with Snowflake, it's also easy. We have what we call an LLM playground. So for example, right now, the code in the notebook I'm showing you uses Mistral Large 2. Mistral Large 2 is a really great model, but it's also expensive. And so what you can do in Snowflake is choose, okay, let's compare Mistral Large with the Llama model, which is slightly cheaper. So if I'm system prompt, let's see if this runs. You just choose your data, you choose the column you want it to work on. So let's choose a different review and see the review just comes up. It looks like Mistral Large and Llama has the same output. This might not always be the case, but what we often find is people use a larger model to do the initial proof of concept, but then as we're moving into production, it becomes really handy to be able to iterate and test out with different prompts to see what kind of results you get. Also, you can change temperature, tokens. Cortex Guard is built in guardrails around your outputs, so everything is just kind of there for you. All right, so let's go back. So we wanted to group into awful, poor, okay, good, excellent. So we're just going to call this column a clean rating. So essentially, take all the reviews, put them into this clean rating, and then we can group them and do a little bit discovery. And so here we have another prompt. Understanding if the customer would recommend the food truck. So you can see now we're being able to do a little bit more second order analysis. We haven't moved the data. It's pretty simple. You can figure out how to do this. Most of our analysts, engineers are able to do this, and without a lot of complex infrastructure. And it all, again, is just a complete prompt. So when you look at where the notebook has been building, it's really not that much code, which most of our users do love to code. But what we're finding is about 70 to 80% of people's time is only getting to this point. It's making sure, do I have the right data? Is the data sufficient quality? Is the data AI ready? Who has access? How can I move it in and out? I have to move the data out to potentially group to translate, move it back in, or I have to move it out to then create a new column and iterate with LLM prompts to find a clean review rating and then move it back in. And so what we've done is essentially consolidate and complete end-to-end workflow really just within one notebook, and you don't have to do very much to get there. So we'll just walk through it a little bit more. So let's look at clean, recommend. We're just kind of looking now at food trucks. So which of our food trucks are doing well or not doing so well? So this is where what just was a group of review text can now become business value. And this is the shift from saying, okay, I have all of this unstructured or semi-structured data available to me. How now can I help business users actually get value out of that data? So here we'll just look at the truck brand name, count, etc. So you can see it's just aggregating recommended categories, and then I'm just putting in a data frame so you can see it. Everything's in Markdown. You might not do this with all your code. It might get quite tedious, but it's quite easy to do in Snowflake. And then everything is split down into different cells, so we can run them. Okay, let's look at, let's say we want to find the Kit Kat ramen bar, which looks like a bad number of customers don't want to go back to Kit Kat ramen bar. Okay, so now we want to pull out Kit Kat ramen bar and do a little bit more digging to see what's going on. So if we look at, okay, sorry, my Wi-Fi issues. All right, so if we're looking at the trucks, okay, trucks apart from truck 5. All right, so that means I want to focus on Kit Kat ramen bar. I want to focus on truck 5. What else can I find out from my data to inform the feedback that I'm giving back? Okay, so now let's use sentiment. So we've used Cortex Complete. We've grouped them into different categories. And normally sentiment analysis might be something that a machine learning engineer might build for you, or it might be quite complex. But now with GenAI and Cortex LLM functions, you can get a sentiment score on data in a single SQL statement, which is pretty cool. And so in order to understand sentiment on the data, all you have to do is use a Cortex function, which you can see. It's in Python, or you can also do this via a SQL statement that's really easy, like I showed earlier, where it's just select Cortex sentiment, and then you point to the data, and then it'll give you a score, -1 to 1. And now you can run analytics on that sentiment score, so you can understand the sentiment behind the reviews. Was it positive? Was it negative? And now do something with that data. And then finally, we'll start working on visualization. So here now we'll look at sentiment distributions. All of this, no data science person needed, which is quite nice, and be able to understand a little bit more what trucks need action, what customers are saying, and what to do. So for example, we've put all of the category sentiment into, well, we have a JSON here, and so now you're able to take all of those different pieces of analytics, put it into a JSON, and then use it downstream in processing. So what do we find? We found we have poor food quality, unresponsive customer support, and unacceptable service. So just looking at the food truck network, what are we seeing from reviews and pulling and being able to aggregate data across different sources? Here are the issues that we're finding, which would be pretty bad for a food truck. And so finally, understanding what the sentiment is, looking at the review count. Again, you can just pull all of this together. It's pretty easy, either with issues and recommendations. So again, using GenAI to understand what the review is saying, make that review into a group so you can use that in analytics, looking at the sentiment, and now looking at recommendations, just using prompts. And then finally, looking at the sentiment by truck. So I'll go through this review truck. So being able to look at, okay, what is the review count by number of sentiments? So you're now able to understand for that truck, okay, exactly how dissatisfied are customers. So again, it's another business insight that you have from just what were FAR review statements. And so finally, let's look specifically at truck 5. So this is where you can easily aggregate, pull data. If you're just trying to dive into something specifically, you can look at the summary of aggregated customer reviews. So we see food temperature issues, cold food, service issues, etc. And now the final piece, okay, so we've learned a lot that truck 5 needs a lot of help. We were able to do this pretty quickly. You can probably build this notebook pretty fast. So with just a little bit of digging, you took all of that text reviews, and now you're able to use a prompt to say, hey, truck 5, there's some issues. Can you take a look at the data and go on? So like we see, we were able just to take everything stored in an S3 bucket, but Snowflake also has built-in ingestion. Let's say you want to combine this with other types of like social media posts. Let's say you want to start combining this with all different types of data that might be in different formats. You can build an entire integrated pipeline coming from all of that data, using AI to transform that data and find additional analytics, and then also using AI to action that data. So all of this is again, available on a Streamlit app, but just to give you kind of a flavor of what something looks like working with Snowflake. When we talk to our customers, the biggest challenge and change that we see, it's not always in the what. And so we're a really big believer in focusing not just on the what of the features or capabilities we're providing, but how does this make your life different? So how does this change what you're spending time on, what you're spending time debugging, what conversations you're having, how you're working with the business owners and analytics teams. And what Snowflake likes to do is really make sure that we are empowering and making sure there's full end-to-end visibility so that developers and analysts, even data science engineers, are able to understand end-to-end what's happening with the data, access the data, ensure its quality, and then actually show value from that data with business users. And I'll just go back. And so that is my hands-on lab. And like I said, there is a quick start for this hands-on lab. So just a step-by-step tutorial to get started. We would always recommend, honestly, once you get in the platform and start playing around with it, you get a free trial. It's really easy to see the difference in what this looks like for how you're pulling together data and and all the things that you can do pretty quickly within a couple of hours. So some of the POCs we've won, it's because one person from Snowflake has been able to do something end-to-end production ready in 2 hours versus not being able to do it in weeks or months. And then finally, just want to also plug our community. So we're also a big believer in knowledge sharing and learning, and so we're launching our Madrid user group, and so this is part of our community. So thank you for listening today. I hope you found it interesting. Here's the Madrid user group. Also Lego, stop by our booth if you're interested in winning a Lego, but hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully you have some examples of data in your own mind. Get started, and this gives you a good example of what a Gen AI-powered workflow will look like.
First one, if you can say only one main key advantage of this pipeline developed with Snowflake services over other pipelines developed by other cloud services, what would it be?
Scale. So when you're talking across lots of different data sets, large data sets, different users, being able to really efficiently scale and process data efficiently is really important to production readiness. So understanding that when you're especially building POCs, it's just a one-off, but when you're talking about now pushing something into production across large data sets, complexity, being able to scale is incredibly important for making sure that it continues to work.
Second question in the application, all the code and the parts of the notebook is generated by an artificial intelligence or it is coded by hand, and the artificial intelligence model just generate the result from the queries?
Yeah, so no, one of our developers wrote the notebook, and sometimes I just play around with it depending what I'm feeling like, also easy to do. Where there's artificial intelligence is underneath the hood. So like I said, in the notebook, you're writing a Python function or a SQL statement that calls Cortex complete. That then uses artificial intelligence to complete whatever the task is. So you can also use artificial intelligence to generate code. We have a Copilot, or if you just Google, there's lots of, that's easy too. But no, this particular notebook was written by a human.